Had they won 3-0, it would have been a bloody disgrace for Australian rugby, quite frankly. You either front up or you bugger off. Those are the only options, only two options. I couldn't see that Lions team being any bloody good, and it wouldn't have been any good touring during New Zealand or touring South Africa. They would have got a bloody hiding. I think they're bloody hell of a lot better than they are.
Welcome to the DSPN.
Team New Zealand's in trouble.
Goal! He's done it again, Ricky Herbert.
The Devlin Sports Podcast Network.
It is with great pleasure we welcome back an All Black icon. He's a great mate of the show. Have him on as much as possible during rugby season. The All Black Murray Mexted played over 70 games for our country and wore that jersey with enormous pride and didn't give it up until he decided that it was time. Mex, you sent me a great text over the weekend about the Wallabies coming of age. You're very excited about what you saw from them in that third test. May I temper that by just saying that there's always the unknown when you're down 2 in a series, and so they wanted it more, they needed it more. I'm not saying that the Lions didn't go out there to win that, because I would imagine that every single test any man plays, you can't go out there half-assed and not really play to your best, because you're probably going to get hurt doing that. So the Lions were committed, sure, but I just think the Wallabies had more to gain from winning that test. But your thoughts?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely fair. But if you remember the second test, the Wallabies actually won 60 minutes of the second test. You know, they definitely won 60 minutes. And they looked the better side. I mean, I don't actually think this Lions side is very good.
There you go.
I mean, I know people are trying to sell it to us, particularly the Lions themselves, and had they won 3-0, it would have been a bloody disgrace for Australian rugby, quite frankly. And I think there's a couple of things here.
Sure.
What is the level of the Australian rugby team at the moment? What is and that'll give you a sort of a gauge on what this Lions side is. And the second question I've asked the listeners is to think about how many of those Lions players would make a World 15. If you named a World 15, which included players from South Africa and New Zealand and everywhere else for that matter, England, wherever, well, no, not England, apart from the home nations, from the rest of the world, how many of those Lions players would make that 15? And I've looked at the team. I've looked at 2 or 3 times and I can't see one of them.
Oh, come on, a Toje. Surely a Toje.
No. Hey, in the second test, this is the interesting thing. In the second test, you didn't see him in the first half at all. He was dominated in the first half. He disappeared from the game. And in the second test, when the momentum came a little bit, about halfway through the second half, he popped up and did a few things, for sure. Third test, well, we didn't see him, did we? He left the field after a few minutes.
Okay, I'm going to throw a couple of other names at you then. In that case, Tom Curry.
But you can't tell me that you would put a Toje in the same team as the South African locks or even the New Zealand lock, even our last. Well, we don't know who the World 15 team is, but imagine would you put a Toje in the same category as Barrett?
Yep. I would. Over a period of his career where he's been ultra consistent, I think he's one of the best in the world, no question about it.
Okay, but he's not in the same category, really, quite frankly, as Whitelock or Retallick, or about 4 of their best locks in South Africa. So what I'm saying is name a World 15 and tell me which of those Lions players would make it, and I don't reckon anyone would.
Okay, well, hang on. I'm going to throw some other names at you. I think Furlong, the prop, was magnificent during the series. I thought Bundy Aki showed. I thought Tyke Byrne was pretty impressive. Curry was pretty impressive as well. Russell I wouldn't actually put as my first 5. I'd say that halfback they'd probably have a chance, but I'd say I'd go Roy in the French halfback probably. But no, I see where you're coming from. It's always difficult with the World 15, but just looking at that Lions side, Mex, I agree with you. I think they've talked themselves up to be one of the greatest Lions side, but they're playing a Wallabies team which were awful in the first test, have come up on a big curve for sure. But in terms of other Lions teams, I don't think they go down as a great Lions side. No.
Well, I mean, you know, it's our opinion, isn't it?
That's all it is.
And my opinion is that they're not a great team, the Lions side, and I think the Wallabies are the weakest they've been for a long time. And they grew up in this last test match, and I think it's absolutely fantastic. This is what is so good about a Lions tour. Not only does it generate a whole bunch of interest and enthusiasm from the local team, it's also the periphery of the local team. We're talking about the supporters, the spectators, the wives, the girlfriends, the partners, all those sorts of people, because you can't say that this Lions tour hasn't been created an incredible environment in Australia,
Sure.
wherever they go. I didn't go to this one, but I've often been over there when the Lions tour, twice or three times, I think, over the years. And the whole thing just pumps. I mean, there's some sort of magic between that Australian tour, and normally the weather is absolutely beautiful the whole time, and it's for the British, it's a great place to tour.
Oh, yeah.
It really is. And so all their family and friends come. I mean, 40,000 Lions supporters is extraordinary, isn't it? And
Amazing.
seeing 80,000 in the second test and 70,000 in the third test. I mean, it's a wonderful event. However, if you look at the realities of the world, would you put any of those Lions players in the World 15? I'm saying no, not one. Even after all the players you mentioned, good on you, nice, generous guy, but not the case. It's not the case. They're not up to it. Then you'd look at the Australian team and say, is this a good Australian team? And you'd say at the beginning of that series is a very average Australian team. And rugby was under the covers a little bit in Australia for the last 12 months or 18 months or so. But I'll tell you what, that's all changed. And that's how players become great players. You know, if you're playing hard teams, really hard teams, competitively every week, and they're beating you, and the media's giving you a hammering, you either front up or you bugger off.
Sure.
Those are the only options. Only two options: front up or bugger off.
Yeah.
Now, and they fronted big time, and I was so pleased. I was delighted because for the life of me, I couldn't see that Lions team being anybody good, and it wouldn't have been any good touring during New Zealand or touring South Africa. They would have got a bloody hiding, but they would have gone away 3-zip. We're the greatest in the world. Rah, 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 rah. Best Lions team of all time. What a lot of ballyhoo.
Yeah.
Not even near the best.
No, they're not.
Lions team
No,
of
they
all
aren't the
time.
best. No.
So
Just on
let's
that,
bury
just while I get that, would you rate that team that came to, and this is over 2 series, but I was a bit young for the 71 series, and I was probably still a bit young for 74, but that combined Lions side that managed to come to New Zealand and win, then go to South Africa and won every game apart from the last test they drew, that to me still got to be rated as the number one side, doesn't it? Back in those days,
I
with those
agree.
long... Okay.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and it stood the battle of time because people forget. People have got short memories, and you're more inclined to think about the teams that have played in the last 4 or 5 or 6 years, maybe. So it's a long way back, that, Martin, and there'll be a lot of people that are listening to this that won't remember that series.
Sure.
But you did right. They made their mark. It's like the truly great players. Those guys, the Colin Meads, the Brian Lahore, the Richie McCaws, those sorts of guys are in your mind forever.
Yeah.
But there's only a handful of those. And it's the same with tours. You only remember the really, really best. And I don't think that Lions team deserved to be called that. And the Wallabies proved it comprehensively in that last game. I mean, that Lions team didn't look like they were going to score a try till 20 minutes to go.
But how much of that is
it was-
due to the fact that they'd already won the series?
Yeah, well, that's a point. That's a point. But to me, I think, and I'll go back to that same line that I use often. A good team will beat a team of good players.
Always.
And I think that they were a good team, the Lions team. I don't think they were a team of good players. The Australian team became a good team for that last test match because they all knew that that was it for them. It was front up or bugger off.
Yeah.
The whole lot of them. Everyone. I don't think anybody would have escaped. Maybe a couple because they probably didn't have world-class players to fill their positions. But if they did have world-class players hanging around in Sydney and Brisbane and places like that, and Perth maybe, they'd be in the next team if the Australians had lost that game. So I was delighted for rugby. I was delighted for rugby in Australia. I was delighted for New Zealand rugby because we need the Australians to be really strong. We need it to be terribly competitive. We need New Zealand to be ruthless in defence of their reputations when those teams from up north who are very good at rating themselves. They are very good at that. Their media is very good at rating
they
themselves.
are, yeah, too.
The players get a bit carried away. They think they're a bloody hell of a lot better than they are. And every time they come to the Southern Hemisphere, they get their curry when they go to Durban in South Africa, and there's no doubt about that. But they also need to be hammered. The matches need to be hammered home from Australia and from New Zealand, not just New Zealand now and again and South Africa. It's the three of us. And Argentina now are jumping up, aren't they? Because of Argentina's involvement in the Rugby Championship, they've got better and better, and I just think it's fantastic. Because when you travel around Argentina and you look at their teams and their background and everything, they're uncomplicated, the Argentinians. I mean, it's a very complicated place, rugby in South Africa. It's relatively straightforward, I think, in New Zealand. It's complicated in Australia because of all the other codes that they share the lifeline with. But in Argentina, it's just straightforward. It's a bit like here, actually. No fuss. They're just into it.
And they get on with it.
And not yelling. They're yelling and screaming support for their team, but not yelling and screaming how good they are.
Yeah, they don't do
and
that.
And those guys up north, they sort of tend to do that. They tend
well,
to
they've done it the whole time.
Else.
They did. I mean, and also, look, this media machine that is these days with social media and everything else, and if you dare argue or dare put your hand up and say, I don't actually think that you're as good as what you think. I mean, you're just what you're wearing. Look, all of that aside, can one guy make a huge difference, Max? And the stats around Will Skelton are just incredible. And I started the show by saying this. Look, when he was off the field, the Lions won 39-22. When he was on the field for the minutes that he was, and he wasn't for the first test, and he was only for 40 in the second, the Wallabies won 38-24. Now, I don't know what to read into these numbers, apart from they're great numbers, aren't they? That this one guy, and you add to him Valentini, who didn't play the third test, those two guys, just physically what they can bring in terms of their bulk, their power, their desire, their forward momentum, almost changed the whole series, right?
Yeah, and the fuss you've made of Skelton and Valentini is valid. They were outstanding, and they provided what the Wallabies needed to be able to compete.
Sure.
In the first test.
Yeah, and they didn't have that. They provided that.
They provided physicality and physique, size. The Lions haven't got a player as big as Skelton.
Well, we haven't.
But Skelton didn't win too many balls in the line-out.
He doesn't jump much, mate. He doesn't.
No, so you see, I think that if you're a purist, and I believe I'm a purist.
You've always been a purist.
And I'm
mate.
watching that game, the guy that stood out for me was Frost. Because Frost won so much ball. Now, I've been screaming this for bloody years. If you don't have the ball, you don't win the rugby.
No, you can't win the game, no.
You've got to have the ball. And that's what happened to that Lions team in the third test. They didn't have enough ball. And the Australians used the ball this time, and they were so hungry. The other guy that I think needs, and I'm not saying that Skelton wasn't good. Skelton was fantastic because he provided the physique and taking the ball up consistently, taking it up now and now again. And you heard him interviewed, you knew he was motivated, you knew he was stimulated, he was on fire. It's hard to say a 36 or 30, is that how old he is? 36-year-old grew up, but he's grown up. I've seen that guy Skelton play 20 test matches, but he never stood up like he did against the Lions. So fantastic, good stuff. They missed Valentini, but the guy that took his place, well, Frost was there in both tests, wasn't he? But Frost was good because he won ball. But the guy that really took his place was Nick White, because Nick White was just saying, bugger you guys, you're in our country. We're going to win this game. We don't care how we win it.
Yep.
We're going to win this game. And he was outrageously confident and arrogant. I mean, he was everything you'd imagine an Australian in the main street in Pitt Street in Sydney.
Yeah.
I
was thinking an Australian with a cricket bat in their hand, Max, as well. That's how they do it. They strut the stuff, don't they, right?
That's right. You meet a group of Aussies in a bar who've had a few drinks, and you bloody know that they're Australians and they're the best bloody guys in the world. And we're second cousins and bugger off. We don't want you in this bar anyway. We're happy with ourselves.
All of that.
He was almost saying that to the Lions players. He was saying, this is our place, and you got to bloody beat us. And I thought he lifted the ante. I thought it was a great way for him to finish his career because he's been, a tiger for punishment in many respects, but he's been outstanding for Australian rugby, and he led that team. He was the leader in that game. Anyway, I thought it was a great game. It was great for rugby that Australia won. I think they've grown up. I still think they're going to have troubles. I mean, their next 2 test matches, I think, I might be wrong.
They're in South Africa, mate.
They're in South Africa, aren't they?
Mm-hmm. Both of them, yeah.
And do we know where the first one is? Because that's pretty important in South Africa.
Lachlan, can you look that for us?
Sea level.
See where it is? He's just having a look for us. And then
It'll be interesting.
I like what they've done with it this year, Mex, and that. So we go to Argentina and play 2 over there. I like that. I like Aussie going to South Africa and playing 2 there. I like the Yappies coming here playing 2. I like the fact we go to Australia. We go to Australia and we split those, but next year we get 3 in South Africa. I like this longer bit where you go there and you play a couple of matches like that. I think it's great. Ellis Park to start with, then Cape Town. So they take them to altitude first, and then they take them down the coast.
So the Wallabies are in trouble.
Straight away you go to altitude, yeah. Well, Ellis Park.
Now, for the good of this series, the Rugby Championship, it would be perfect if South Africa and New Zealand were playing the Wallabies in Australia. Say South Africa was coming to Australia and playing in
2
the
tests
MCG
there,
or wherever.
then coming over here.
It'd be great because they would grow another leg. And I think that's one of the problems. I think in New Zealand, if you play NPC rugby, and I've been watching it over the last week, it's bloody hard work. I mean, you don't get away with anything. You get exposed. If you're a decision maker at number 10 and your team doesn't do very well, it's pretty obvious who the problem was circling around, who was making poor decisions. That's how competitive that game is. But that sort of rugby in Australia doesn't really exist.
No, it doesn't.
So they don't play enough hard rugby. In South Africa they do, and in England they do, and in France they definitely do.
Yeah.
But in New Zealand they do as well. So Australia miss out. So they need a lot of games like they had against the Lions for them to sharpen their axe a little bit, and bloody stiffen up. But I think if they're playing South Africa at Ellis Park, it's going to be a handful. They're probably prepared for it though. I will say they're prepared for it. So if they can get through that, if they could win that game, it will be a hell of a rugby championship. It would just be fantastic. But they're not going to win the game, in my view. But they may. If they do, fantastic. If they do win the game, they certainly won't win the second test. And then all of a sudden they come home. They've got to play us. They've got to play Argentina. I'm not sure. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be a good series, there's no doubt.
DSPN.